Chris, I'm an alcoholic. It's good to be here tonight. This is the fourth Monday that we've been talking about the chapter working with others. Some of the things that we've been discussing over the last weeks are kind of remarkable. In the early days of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill thought it was necessary to give instruction to us on after we've had our experience, how we should approach others and be helpful, helping them find the same pathway that we've found. And in the chapter working with others, there's some things that I find remarkable. The amount of information that we're supposed to pass on to the person that we're working with, the potential prospect or protege or whatever you want to call them, the amount of information that we're supposed to give them and how we're supposed to give that information is really, really different than what most of us experienced when we got involved with Alcoholics Anonymous. It's like, maybe there's some people in these squares tonight that had somebody sit them down and explain to them before they even took them to a meeting, to explain to them what Alcoholics Anonymous was, what you do in Alcoholics Anonymous, the steps that are the suggested program of recovery that many of us find absolutely essential for long-term sobriety and recovery, and the spiritual recovery program. When I showed up in Alcoholics Anonymous, it was about exposing me to the fellowship. Here's the fellowship. Here's what we do in the fellowship. Here's what we don't do in the fellowship. These are the type of meetings you go to. This is the differences between a step meeting and a speaker meeting and a discussion meeting. And it was about exposing me to the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. That seemed to be like the main thing that everyone was interested in me understanding right out of the gate when I was new. Now that goes completely at odds with what they're talking about in the chapter working with others. And working with others it's saying kind of, well, there are meetings that we go to, but here's what you need to do with the alcoholic. And it's going over the 12-step recovery process. Now, Alcoholics Anonymous has changed. We've gotten huge. You can't shake a stick, without hitting a recovery meeting somewhere. There's 300 different 12-step groups. I mean, there's fellowships everywhere. And it's changed a little bit what the experience of Alcoholics Anonymous since the writing of this book. But what I believe hasn't changed is what alcoholism is and what the recovery process for alcoholism is. I believe that they remain completely the same and probably will for as long as, until medical science comes up with some way of changing us, fundamentally from alcoholic to non-alcoholic. The recovery program is gonna remain the same. So a lot of times, when I first was exposed to this chapter, I thought, wow, dude, hardcore, listen, we've got a lot of meetings now, you don't have to work that hard. We've got a lot of meetings. And what I've come to believe today is that we needed the fellowship to grow. We needed a lot of focus on the fellowship. It brought a lot of people in. But if we don't follow with them this recovery program, if we don't help alcoholics become exposed to and work through the recovery program as it's laid out in this book, we're gonna be a revolving door fellowship. That's what we're going to be. People are going to move in and they're going to move out. They're going to move in, they're going to move out. And if you've been around for any considerable period of time, you know that pretty much is the way a lot of Alcoholics Anonymous is today. If I go to a beginners meeting and have for a long, long time. And in that beginners meeting, there's at least 3 or 4 people that are raising their hand that are saying this is their first week. And there's at least 10 people that raise their hand and say they're within the first 30 days. Now, this meeting has, in its heyday prior to COVID, it would have 100, 120 people at it. Now, if those people stayed, if the people stayed who raised their hand at, with under a week or under 30 days stayed, we wouldn't be able to hold that meeting in Giant Stadium. You know what I mean? So you can't tell me that it's not a revolving door fellowship. But what this book talks about that was true back then, that I believe is still true, is that rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed this path. And this chapter is specifically about teaching us how to expose the new prospect to thoroughly following of the path, right? So we've been 3 weeks and all we've covered is the first visit. We've covered some information, but we've covered the first visit. And in the first visit, we're supposed to tell them about what alcoholism is, using the information that's in the chapter more about alcoholism, and there is a solution. That alcoholism has an obsession of the mind part. It has an allergy of the body part. We're powerless over alcohol. What does that look like? What does that mean? We're supposed to share a bunch of our own personal experiences about our personal powerlessness and how baffled we were, with our utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how much we wanted to. We're supposed to talk about that alcoholism. We're supposed to talk about what the illness alcoholism is, the symptoms of it, as they're laid out in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And then on the first visit, we're supposed to explain what the program of recovery looked like for us. How did we do an inventory? How did we do a fifth step? How did we put together a list of amends? How did we go out and make amends? What were some of our experiences making those amends? What about this prayer meditation? What about this higher power? What are you talking about? We're supposed to explain how we came to terms with a power greater than ourselves. And then we're supposed to explain to them why we're sitting in front of them, because there's better things to do. You know what I mean? We're sitting in front of you because this is part of our recovery program. It's called the 12-step, and the 12-step means we are to carry the message to the still sick and suffering alcoholic. Now, telling somebody where all the meetings are, that's a great thing. Putting somebody in your car and driving them to a meeting, that's a great thing. Talking them into becoming the coffee maker or the cookie guy, all those things are great, right? But the best is to explain to somebody what the problem is and what the solution is. I said this the other week, like if you went in for cancer treatment and all they did was ask you to join the cancer survivor support group, and make coffee for the support group, and you're going to be the treasurer or the secretary of the support group, and we're going to meet, 5 times a week, you would walk out of there thinking that it wasn't even a hospital, right? That, you want treatment for cancer. What about chemo? What about radiation? You know what I mean? What's this support group crap? But in Alcoholics Anonymous, that's what can happen. We can sit in the waiting room as part of the support group, day after week, after month, after year, after decade, not understanding how important it is to take the 12 steps and to recover from alcoholism. The thing about the 12 steps is you don't understand them before you do them. They're experiential. So someone has to convince us that they, like us, didn't really think that they were going to work in our case, but however they did them, and the result was unbelievable. That I can't tell you how great my life is today. That's the kind of thing that we need to do, because the 12 steps don't look like they're going to work. So people can sit in AA meetings year after year after year, seeing the steps up on the wall, thinking that, maybe that's some historical thing, or, maybe some people benefit from something like that. But, my case is a bit different. I'm more complicated, than that. The steps are for the uncomplicated people. You can come up with any kind of reason. So is it important to do what this chapter is asking us to do? Sit knee to knee with somebody and go over this information with them at some point in time? Absolutely. Some of us have spent years in Alcoholics Anonymous before somebody did this with us. You know what I mean? I was a year and a half sober, and I was doing side jobs, electrical side jobs, right? And God help the people. I was not a very good electrician. Sleep by the door. It was the advice that I would give them, on the way out. But anyway, this one guy invited me over to do some electrical work, and he needed a ceiling fan hung or some stupid thing. But I'm halfway through this, and I realized that's not really why he asked me to come over. He was telling me his story. This guy was 12-stepping me. This guy's name was Foster. And Foster got sober in 1957 when they were still doing 12-step calls. You understand what I mean? Like 1957, this guy got sober. And he got me to talk about my alcoholism and everything. And then he started to talk about his experience in Alcoholics Anonymous. Did he do it exactly like this book said? No, he did it in a very, very personal way. But what it was a 12-step call on a guy he had been going to meetings with for a year and a half, and a lot of times that's our experience. I think it's but I think it's really, really important what's in this book. Now, last week we finished up the first visit. We're going to pick back up this week on the second visit. All right. And the second visit starts about halfway down the page on page 96. It says this: suppose now you are making your second visit to a man. He's read this volume and he's prepared to go through the 12 steps of the program of recovery. Now, okay, so in the first visit, we're supposed to leave our book and we're supposed to ask them to read it. There's a number of reasons why we want to do that, right? One of my favorite reasons is when we ask somebody, are they willing to go to any lengths? We want to offer them the dignity of understanding what any lengths is going to look like. And if they've read Bill's story, if they've read up, if they've read this book and the stories in the back, whatever, they're gonna understand something about what it's gonna look like, right? What any lengths is gonna look like. Now is everybody that you talk to and you leave a book with them, and on the second visit you meet up with them, is every one of them going to say, yeah, I'm ready to go through the 12 steps? Probably not. All right. We don't win a toaster for every single person, that we get through. For me to continue to allow someone to believe that they're not going to need to do the recovery work that's laid out in Alcoholics Anonymous, for me to continue to think that that's okay, I'm not convinced that's the right direction to go. You know what I mean? But if they are convinced, it says, having had the experience yourself, you can give them much practical advice. What experience? The experience of going through the steps and having a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Let him know you're available if he wishes to make a decision. That's a third step. If he wants to to make a serious decision about turning his will and his life over to the care of God and coming all the way into this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, I'm there with you. I'll be right there with you if you want to make that decision. Let him know that you're available if he wants to tell his story. You know, that's shorthand for a fifth step. And a fifth step can include a lot of things. Today, I really think it's important to read the inventory in the fourth step to somebody. But there's you know, sometimes people need to do some talking. You know, be prepared for long talk, it says in this, right? But do not insist upon it if he prefers to consult someone else. So this happened to me, you know, probably a couple months ago. I did a ton of work with this guy. He was, you know, he's willing to go through the steps, right? And he did a fifth step with me. And for some reason, he didn't like the way I did the fifth step with him. You know, it was mainly listening and identifying. And you know, he got huffy. And then he called me up. And he called me up later and he said, you know, I'm gonna see if I can find somebody else to work with. And I'm like, God bless you, man. You know what I mean? There's no ownership in this. You know, you want to consult somebody else, God bless you. About 2 weeks later, he called me back and I'm like, dude, you had your chance. Okay. You know, I'm not gonna play ping pong sponsor with you, you know, move it on down the line, you know, but you know, sometimes I'm that way. Anyway, so it says here, he may be broke and homeless. If he is, you might try to help him about getting a job or give him a little financial assistance. You know, I've done this. And I've made huge mistakes doing it. It's basically saying, if you can help somebody out, but you need to be sure that they're sincere in their desire to recover from alcoholism, moving through these steps. Believe it or not, there are people out there that, you know, that are just playing a game or trying to use you, right? So the book makes very, very clear we can't play that game, because we will be hindering their chances of recovery. We could be causing a lot of harm by doing that. You know what I mean? But there are times where it calls for that. I've moved people into my house for short periods of time. You know, I've seen people who, you know, got just jammed up one way or another financially, and you know, I've helped out financially. People have helped me and my family out financially over the years. You know, some of us get in a barrel every once in a while, but the litmus test for whether or not to help somebody is their sincerity, you know, as far as, are they serious about these 12 steps? You know, are they making amends? Are they praying and they meditating? Are they available to help other people? You know, or are they just using AA as a spiritual gas station to fill up, you know, twice a week, and not being available to help anybody do anything? You know, perhaps you want to take a man into your home for a few days. Be sure to use your discretion. Be certain he will be welcomed by your family and that he's not trying to pose upon you for money, connections, or shelter. Permit that, and you only harm him. You know, Bill was very intuitive. The whole codependency industry, you know, came into being in like the 80s, right? You know, like, I'm codependent, you're codependent, we're all codependent. That's one of those famous books. So he's recognizing this right out of the gate. There was this kid. He was in our home group back in the 90s. And he was a troublemaker, right? He was cocky and he was a troublemaker. And I didn't particularly care for this kid much. You know, he's always causing trouble and trying to start fights and stuff. And his mother was a really good group member of ours. And the mother was really the the push to get this kid to show up in meetings. Like, you're going to stay at the house, son, you're going to go to meetings, right? And so there was a lot of family push for this guy to go to meetings. Now, he would relapse, and he would relapse big. And every single time his mother invited him back into the house and cooked him a big steak and tucked him in, nice clean sheets. And so every single time, he came out of a bender, she took care of him. And guess what? He didn't make it out of one of these benders. He didn't make it one time. And who knows what would have happened if there would have been more common sense, and more effort. We don't know, I mean, fate is fate, but I was pretty convinced that wasn't the right way to go. And my first sponsor told me something. He goes, Chris, never put a pillow under them when they're on the way down. And I know what that means today. Sometimes the pain of a bottom generates sufficient resilience and desire to take the change, to involve yourself in the change that's going to be necessary for recovery and permanent sobriety. Sometimes that pain is a good thing. It says again and again in this chapter, wait for the end of a spree. Don't talk to him when he's drunk and jovial. Wait till he comes to the next day with some summons in his back pocket. I understand that. And Bill understood, codependency before the codependency wave hit us. Anyway, so permit that and you only harm him. You will be making it possible for him to be insincere. And my God, the last thing we want to do is make it possible for an alcoholic to be insincere. They usually are insincere on their own without any help, but we certainly don't want to be helping them. You may be aiding in his destruction rather than in his recovery. Never avoid these responsibilities. Now, be sure you are doing the right thing if you assume them. Helping others is the foundation stone of your recovery. A kindly act once in a while isn't enough. Now, this leads us into what I would like to term the 12 inconveniences, right, Marty? So anyway, I got to tell the story. So this one, I was going to this meeting. It was about a year and a half ago, and this one guy in the meeting would like break in. You know how like a minute or two before the meeting, if nobody is muted, everybody's talking, and it's you have to be really good at being able to get in there in between people talking. And this one guy would just break in and Chris, I want you to speak at my meeting. And it just it took me back. It was just really inappropriate. It was Zoom etiquette unacceptable, right? And so he did this time and time again, and I'm just kind of shrinking in the corner. Finally, I go, okay, I'll speak at your meeting. I'll take it offline. So what happens is a couple of meetings later, he breaks in and he does the same thing. Like while other people are talking and chatting and connecting with each other, he's like, I need a topic. Chris, I need a topic. So just being a smart ass, I break in and I said, yeah, here's my topic. Like, there's the 12 steps and the 12 traditions and the 12 concepts. Well, they just discovered in the archives a bunch of material. Bill was working on the 12 inconveniences, and I've just got done reading his work on the 12 inconveniences. So what I want, I'd like the topic of the meeting to be the 12 inconveniences. I was just being a smartass, right? Well, all of a sudden the notices go out. Chris S., the 12 inconveniences. So now I'm screwed, right? So I, you go into deep meditation, and intuitive thought is a good thing. And I realize there's a bunch of very inconvenient things in the chapter working with others. And I look them over and I count them up. And guess what? There's 12 of them. So listen, if some idiot can take the 9-step promises and call them the 12 promises, I can call these the 12 inconveniences. Okay. So anyway, I'm not going to call out the number, but I'm going to read them. You have to act the Good Samaritan every day if need be. Now, this goes along with you have to place the welfare of others ahead of your own. You got to be on the firing line of life. There's just one statement after another. All the prayers, the 3rd-step prayer, the 7th-step prayer, it's all about fitting ourselves to be useful. This whole program is about fitting ourselves to be useful. So being the Good Samaritan every day is necessary. And, I can say that I've lived by that principle, and it's inconvenient. It may mean the loss of many nights' sleep and great interference with your pleasures. My wife and I do some navigation. And what I mean by that is, for one reason or another, a lot of people have started to call us up. If somebody needs detox or really needs, treatment, they're really in a bad way or whatever, we get the phone call, and we know, maybe 20 or 30 treatment centers around the country that are halfway decent. And we can just make that referral, here, so-and-so is in the admission department. Here's their phone number. It's a pretty good place, blah, blah, blah. And so, we do a lot of that. And those phone calls don't come in 9 to 5. You know what I mean? They come in at any time of the day or night. They'll come in, and great interference with our pleasures. Interruptions to your business. Here's something. Now, I let the people I work for know I'm in recovery, and I'm very active in the recovery community. And some weird things may happen. You may see me on the phone. I may have to pick up and leave. I'm never going to steal your time. I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to steal your time. You're going to get a dime for your nickel out of me. But my life is a little bit unorthodox. And sometimes I'll be put in a position where I'm going to have to be helpful to somebody. And I'll let them know that up front. Now, you can't do that with every job. I realize that, but I've been lucky that the people that I've worked for have understood that. It may mean sharing your money or your home, counseling frantic wives and relatives, innumerable trips to police courts, sanitariums, hospitals, jails, and asylums. Sharing your money. I can't tell you how many people I've bought dinner for, at the diner after the meeting or whatever. It's not onerous, okay? And it's not my money. I am a steward of the money that's provided to me by God, okay? That's the only way I can describe it, because when I was hoarding it and I was chintzy and, I was always, trying to cheat people, I didn't have any. Now when I really see it is I manage this money, but it's not mine. There's more of it. So I may have to share it. Someone who shares their money a whole lot is Marty. Marty, here's if you're new or just coming back and you need like a little grub steak or whatever, just message Marty. He's good with that. Anyway, innumerable trips to police courts, sanitariums, hospitals, jails, and asylums. I will say treatment centers. I'll say detoxes, IOPs. And listen, get a working knowledge of what to do with someone and where to take someone who is detoxing from alcohol and going into the DTs. You're responsible for that, right? You need to also know that you can die from the delirium tremens. People can stroke out when they go into the DTs. So know which hospitals are a real pain in the ass to drop somebody off to detox. Know which ones will take someone. Understand which ones you got to drop and drive. There are places where if you go in with them, are you with him? Well, take him out of here. But if you drop and drive them, they got to take them. Understand that sometimes you may have to have airline bottles of booze. You may have to taper someone off, or they could die from this alcoholic detox. Back in the day, this was second nature to Alcoholics Anonymous members. They all knew how to do it, right? In this day and age, with the we got Uber, and we got detoxes, and we got all this stuff. We've gotten lazy, but this is a skill set that can save a life. Like the drug addicts want you to have Narcan. Same kind of thing, right? We need to know the proper the proper actions to take when someone is detoxing in front of us, asking us for help. So courts, I've gone to court a ton. I write letters for people who I think are sincere. I'll write letters to the judge. Absolutely. Sanitariums, I did go to one mental hospital. It was really, really a Greystone. Okay. Greystone is in the history of Alcoholics Anonymous. Bill and Hank used to go there and pull people out of Greystone. And there was a Greystone inpatient who was suffering from wet brain, who named our fellowship. Okay. I swear to God, this is true. And he was a Greystone patient, and they would bring a meeting in, and they would try to find alcoholics to take through the steps. And they're having a meeting this one time, and this guy is rocking back and forth. He's like in a fetal position, rocking back and forth, and he's mumbling, right? And somebody goes, "What? God damn it! What? That guy keeps mumbling. What the hell is he saying?" And somebody went over, and did this. He's saying anonymous alcoholics. He's repeating it over and over again. Let's name the book that. Let's name the fellowship that. So we come from a nut, which is perfect. I think that's beautiful. It says the telephone may jangle at any time of the day or night. I've had people call me up in the middle of the Super Bowl saying, "I just got to run some stuff by you." Are you crazy? It's the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl. It's a 1 point difference, in the score. Your telephone may jangle at any time of the day or night. And you got to always remember that alcoholism, these people with chronic end stage, ready to get sober alcoholism, they're also toxically self-centered. So they're not going to care when they call you. You know what I mean? So anyway, your wife may sometimes say she's neglected. I really try to balance out my Alcoholics Anonymous stuff. I really do. But I've been very lucky. My wife Andrea has gotten really involved with it. She's fallen in love with all of you. She knows half of the people on this call probably. She remembers names better than me. So she'll go to an event and she'll go, somebody will come up and say, "Hey, Chris, good to see you again." I'll be like, "Who the hell is that?" She'll go, "That's Bill. We met him in Akron." She's good at remembering names. But she's become involved, and she's become probably as helpful as me. She's the navigator. She's an RN, and she understands the medical surveillance necessity of early sobriety and all that, and she's got tons of connections. So she's tied in. But listen, I get on an airplane a lot. I get on an airplane a lot. I'm leaving Friday morning. I'll see you Sunday afternoon. I've got to balance that. I've got to do it, but I've got to balance it with a family life too. I can't be the guy that's gone every weekend. You know what I mean? That would be selfish. It says a drunk may smash your furniture in your home or burn a mattress. Now, I've never had furniture smashing or mattress burning, or ripping the keys off a piano. I've never had the piano key problem, but I have had, checks stolen, missing cars. I've had a lot of this kind of stuff, right? It's part of the listen, this is God's playground, okay? Not everybody plays nice, but we got to be out there. We got to be part of the recess. You know what I mean? We got to play. So anyway, you may have to fight with him if he's violent. You may have to fight with an alcoholic if he's violent. Now, I ask all of my sponsees to take the martial arts, get involved in martial arts, because some people need a meeting, some people need a beating, and you want to have this skill set. You know what I mean? You want to have this skill set. You want to be able to fight if you have to. Sometimes you'll have to call a doctor and administer sedatives under his direction. Sedative administration is the one thing I just don't do. I had really bad experience being the sedative administrator. You know what I mean? And it didn't go well. So under a doctor's supervision, I have an RN in the house, and she can handle the sedative administration. You know what I mean? I'm not going to do it. Another time, you may have to send for the police or an ambulance. I don't think I've ever had to call the police. I've been at meetings where the police were called. One guy went at somebody else with a knife, and there's things that happen. But an ambulance, yeah, we've had to call ambulances. People fall out. Back in the day, when somebody would pass out, it would be alcohol. The meeting would just keep going, right? You'd step over them to get coffee. In this day and age, with fentanyl and all that stuff, somebody drops out in a meeting, call the goddamn ambulance. You know what I mean? Because unconsciousness is not as safe as it used to be. You understand what I'm saying? Occasionally, you'll have to meet such conditions. So those are the 12 inconveniences. The spiritual life can be an inconvenient life. If you avoid inconvenience where it concerns Alcoholics Anonymous, you could be doing damage to your own spiritual condition. You know what I mean? We seldom allow an alcoholic to live in our homes for a long time. It is not good for him, and it sometimes creates serious complications in a family. Though an alcoholic does not respond, there is no reason why you should neglect his family. Here's another thing. There's so much good information here that translated into the program Al-Anon. We have Al-Anon today that takes up a lot of the slack that it's really asking us to do here in this chapter. But there's many families that we've become involved with who has the alcoholic in the family. It's not like it used to be. Back in the late 30s, divorce was really rare. It was, I think divorce, it's 50-50. Divorce today is 50-50, especially with alcoholics. I gotta tell this story. I'm at the Brooklyn Roundup about 7 or 8 years ago, and KDP is speaking, right? And picture 600 people in this room, and KDP is speaking, and she does a little question and answer. She goes, all right, everybody, I want you to be honest. Everybody in here that's married, raise your hand. And I don't know, 60, 80 people raise their hand. And then she goes, okay. Everybody in here that's been divorced, raise your hand. And like 500 people raise their hand. And then she goes, everybody that's been divorced 3 or more times, raise your hand. And about 150 people raised their hand. More people had been divorced 3 or more times than were married. And these were all adults in this meeting. Now, that blew my mind, right? But why not? Who screws up a relationship more than an alcoholic, for God's sake? our whole foundation is built on selfishness and self-centeredness. So I'm selfish, I'm self-centered, I'm self-seeking, I'm totally wrapped up in self-consciousness. All I can think about is myself and my own plans and my own designs and my own emotions and my own trauma. What are you doing Tuesday night? What could go wrong, right? So of course, it's different today than it was back then. And Al-Anon really plays a really, really wonderful part. But if it's helpful to get involved with a family, if it's helpful to get involved with a family, go ahead, go for it. Get to know the wife, the husband, the parents, whatever. I've done that. You should continue to be friendly to them. The family should be offered your way of life. This is something that doesn't happen unless, you refer somebody to Al-Anon. I've never taken a family member through the 12 steps, but by suggesting somebody to go to Al-Anon, that is a pathway that is at least possible. At least, the opportunity would be there. Should they accept and practice spiritual principles, there's a much better chance the head of the family will recover. It really is almost the death knell of an alcoholic when the critical family members become Al-Anon members in good standing. The days are numbered. You know what I mean? Because there was somebody that Marty and I were really close to, who used to say this: no codependency, no addiction. And he meant it, because he owned and ran a treatment center. He saw it. He saw things that we would never have the opportunity to see. You take away the options, and the bottom presents itself, one way or the other. Honey, would you call the boss, and tell him I'm sick? Oh, I'm sick. Hello, Bill. Yeah, he's hungover again. He can't come to work. You know what I mean? Like total non-codependency. And even though he continues to drink, the family will find life more bearable. This is true too. I think the most heroic thing in the world are these Al-Anons that are still living with a drinking alcoholic. They're still living with a drinking alcoholic. I heard this one story one time. This woman is talking about her husband. She goes, yeah, before I got into Al-Anon, what he'd do is he'd grab his heart. We'd all be mad at him. The whole family be screaming at him, and he'd grab his heart. He'd fall down on the ground. Oh, I'm having a heart attack. And everybody calm down, and are you okay? Are you okay? And the whole mood in the room would change, and can we get you something to drink? Let us help you to the couch. The whole mood of the room would change, right? So she gets into Al-Anon, and the same kind of thing has happened. Everybody's pissed off at him. He falls down on the ground. He grabs his heart, and she goes, I vacuum around him, when he does that. So for the type of alcoholic who is able and willing to get well, little charity in the ordinary sense of the word is needed or wanted. I didn't need a lot of charity, when I was first coming around. I mean, what I needed was support. What I needed was like recovery support. I didn't need a job. I didn't need money. I didn't need a house. I needed a home. I needed you. I needed to get back out into the world, to get out of my isolation and come into the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I needed you to accept me, and you did. And I was pretty messed up. You know what I mean? Hey, good to see you, Chris. I just couldn't believe it. The men who cry out for money and shelter before conquering alcohol are on the wrong track. Yet we do go to great extremes to provide each other with those very things when such action is warranted. This may seem inconsistent, but we think it is not. It is not the matter of giving that is in question, but when and how to give. This is where we intuitively know how to handle a situation that might have normally baffled us. That often makes the difference between failure and success. So if what we can do can mean the difference between failure and success, then there's an onus on us. We can screw up and someone can die by being inappropriate, by not understanding how to handle a situation. That's what he's saying here. So do we need to understand what the 12 steps are? Do we need to understand what being a good Alcoholics Anonymous member is? Do we need to give, you know, in a charitable way of our time? Yes, we do. But if we act selfishly, if we make a mistake, we can cause someone to come to the conclusion that this Alcoholics Anonymous thing and these Alcoholics Anonymous people are not for me. You know what I mean? So I used to hear a ton of one-liners when I came around. If he's ready, you can't do anything wrong. If he's not ready, you can't do anything right. You know, those are crappy ass one-liners that came from really bad treatment centers. You know what I mean? So I go by this book. This book says I can screw up. I can screw up and I can cause somebody, you know, their sobriety. The minute we put our work on a service plane, the alcoholic commences to rely upon our assistance rather than upon God. He clamors for this or that, claiming he cannot master alcohol until his material needs are cared for. Nonsense. Some of us have taken very hard knocks to learn this truth. Job or no job, wife or no wife, we simply do not stop drinking so long as we place dependence on other people ahead of dependence on God. And again, this whole thing, this whole program of recovery is about developing a workable relationship with God, a communicative relationship with God, a transparent relationship with God, where the sunlight of the Spirit can come in and do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. And I think the coolest thing in the world is to offer somebody a path to get that. You know, that is the prize, that connection to the divine. And I've blittered on long enough. I'm gonna stop. And next week we'll finish this chapter up, hopefully. Anyway, thanks.